Welcome back to another video talking about the presidential election, a prediction as to what would happen if the election were conducted right spanking now. Yes, it's January the 5th, 2024. We're 3 years removed almost from an important attack on our capital, but also we're about less than a year removed from an important election that will decide the fate of the country. So let's get right into it. So if we look here, so as we can all plainly see, Trump is up by 2.2% in all these polls. The most favorable one to Joe Biden has him up by one. As we all know, Joe Biden won the 2020 election, as we all know, by 4 points last time. Now he's only up one. So obviously, with that fact, Trump is winning just off of this alone. As we can see, the popular vote, Trump has been leading Biden for approximately forever. It's been a couple months of just pure domination by Donald Trump. We see it for what it is. All right, let's get to it. So as we can see here, although I'm covering up Hawaii and Alaska, we all know that one that's a little bigger is going Republican. It's a little colder. Hawaii, tropical. Obama was arguably born there. We have that as blue as well. We have 209 electoral votes solidified for the Democratic Party. We have 131 for the Republicans. And we have a ton of IKEA yellow, basically, piss yellow, glistening. We have a bunch of toss-up states, and we're going to get right into it. So right off the bat, Ohio, don't be afraid. That's going Republican right off the bat. We have another state that's important, Minnesota. Minnesota is a state that on paper ought to go Republican, the way that the country's looking. But 2016, Trump almost won it, but that was a facade, okay? Minnesota has been cursed by the devil, by a myriad of different factors, to be mired in mediocrity. What that means is that they'll be a marginally Democrat state for the foreseeable future. They keep importing Somali refugees, people that vote Democrat. The suburban white people are just not very woke on any issues. It's very depressing for the Republicans there. So common Democrat W over there. Now, for the next state, we have Texas. This is going Republican. You lose Texas, you lose the whole thing. So this is just basically like saying you have an above 2.0 GPA. Like, thank God, because otherwise you'd be expelled right now. So that's good. So Texas is going Republican. The suburban trend is being assuaged. The economy is in the shitters. Oil-based economics tell you that the prices going up is not the best thing. Maybe for the rest of the country, but in Texas that might be not so much of a big deal because they have cheaper gas than the rest of the country, and also the oil titans benefit from it being expensive. So while it's not that big of a deal anymore, you can just basically put that to rest. So that's good for the Republicans. So Texas is going red, as well as we all know that the Hispanic vote is trending more Republican as well. And that's with all this immigration happening too. So just imagine if we got to close the border a little bit, the Ziploc bag wouldn't let out any more air. We can have some fresh food up in there. So that's the analogy. We also have the state of New Hampshire, which is going to be kind of debatable either way. So of course, New Hampshire is going blue. And this is for a myriad of different reasons. Hold on. This screen. Hold on. Okay. So as we all know, New Hampshire is going blue. And this is because the things that are layered in the cake make it so that basically the Republican Party does not have a good stranglehold on it. The Republican appeal is more broadly okay and palatable to the people that are more secular, atheist white people, suburbanites in New Hampshire, but that sort of thing does not fly with the Trumpian message. So Trump is a horrible fit for the state of New Hampshire. Somebody who's like mild-mannered white guy like Chris Sununu works a lot better. So in this case, if Nikki Haley were running, she'd probably win New Hampshire. But in this case, there's no way. So Joe's going to take New Hampshire. So it looks like New England's looking really good. Of course, we have the entire seaboard blue as well, aside from South Carolina, which brings me to North Carolina. North Carolina is going red as well. This is a state that has a more favorable leaning than Georgia. And so it's just pretty obvious that it's going Republican. No explanation needed there. Now, Mitt Romney won it. Now, Maine is a little difficult. We have one district that'll probably go Republican here, and that's about it. Everything else is going blue, and that's too bad. So there's a weird districting in the state of Maine that makes it so that, it's split up into 3 congressional districts. You have a similar problem or facet, a little bit of a disability with the great state of Nebraska, of course. So anyway, we've got the 2nd district here as blue as well. This is just too far gone for the Trumpian sort of candidate. A Mitt Romney type would do well there, but that's gone. Doesn't matter. It's like one vote or something. I don't fucking care. Okay, now here's the other one. We have the great state of Florida. This is going red no matter what. Here's why. The Republicans have done a good job of actually manipulating the situations to benefit them. So whereas in Colorado, the Democrats took that over like 10 years ago, and then they started putting as like a virus, like their own self-perpetuating democratic voting machine, harvesting operations, funding apparatuses to solicit votes, weed to get the people docile, etc., tax them to all hell. So Colorado's now sustained a blue. Disregarding the shitty president that's as their party leader, Joe Biden, they still will vote blue. Same with New Mexico. But the Republicans, for once, said, "Oh wait, we control the state. Let's manipulate the circumstances." And so that's exactly what they're doing with Florida. So they've basically said, "Okay, Florida is like a tilt Republican Democrat state for 20 years straight. How about we fix that?" So evidently, with the people like Rick Scott, like Marco Rubio, like this guy, what's his name, Ron DeSantis, you basically have these people in a situation winning the state by like 10 for Trump. And a reason why is because the Republicans that have been in control of the state since the 2010s have done a great job thus far. And so the people generally see them as a palatable option. And so it's grandfathered in that if you're a basic Republican at all, you will win the state of Florida, assuming you don't suck. So it's a safe Republican state at this point, in my opinion. Now, with respect to the next state, this is going to be Michigan. Michigan is very difficult to say. Michigan is hard because, of course, there's so many multivariates here. There's so many things that are pro-Trump. There's a lot of poor white people, but there's also a ton of poor black people that vote Democrat. And so you see how there's a diaspora of different folks that honestly it's very much a mosaic of fucked upness. Yeah. And so it's hard to say who's going to win this state. And, it's a little less complicated than Arizona, for instance, because there's not a lot of immigration going on. But what it does have is a group of suburbs that are very contingent on a lot of different things. And so, realistically speaking, I think Donald Trump will win the state of Michigan because there's a little bit of appeal in 2020 from Joe Biden that ostensibly was contingent on, well, I can talk to the union workers. I've worked with people in Scranton, so I'm going to help your automotive industry. That, of course, did not happen even a little bit under Joe Biden. So all those people that went from 2016 Trump to Biden are coming right back to the Mar-a-Lago plantation. They're going right here. And that's brilliant. Now, with Wisconsin, I feel like Wisconsin is also going Republican. There's a couple little things. If you want to know how Wisconsin is doing, you have to look at 3 key counties, the WOW counties. I don't know what they're called. They're like Indian names like Ozaki and whatever. We don't have time for that today. But what we do have time for is basically saying that these suburbs are a key indicator as to what the state is going to do. These indicators are, for the most part, pretty good. And if you look at the urbanization, Madison, Milwaukee, these places are not really growing. So if these were really growing, you would see the Democrats milk and harvest those votes. But because the states in the Midwest are just kind of stagnant, it means that there's a ton of poor white people here that are destitute that will vote Republican, the working class. And those people are necessary. Now, in regards to the rural votes, the Republicans are becoming more savvy when harvesting votes and basically doing everything within legal means to basically logistically help out the voter that used to not participate in elections. Sorry, I hit my lamp. To basically vote for Republicans. And so that's actually why these states are going to become more solidified as GOP sponsored. Now, the next state I wanted to talk about was Georgia. Georgia's going Republican too. The reason why Georgia's going Republican is in part because the Biden campaign is divesting from it. If it's divesting from states like Texas, like Georgia, it shows that they're becoming defensive in their posture. They're saying, well, you know what? Georgia may have gone for Biden in 2020, but so did Michigan, and by like 3 points more. And so they're seeing value in shoring up their 270 than putting on a board of like 320 electoral votes, if that makes sense. So what that means ostensibly is that they're throwing the checkdowns. They're not throwing the 20-yard in cutter. They're not throwing a dagger concept. They're not passing it further than the line of scrimmage. They're saying, okay, I'm going to check it down to the running back and hope he breaks a tackle. That's how the Biden campaign is playing. They're playing not to lose. And that's the thing. So we can see right now that by divesting in Georgia, they don't have any confidence. They're playing like they're from behind. That means that they are actually behind in the state of Georgia. Therefore, as of right now, Trump is winning it. The governorship under Brian Kemp has actually been taken pretty well. He beat his opponent in 2022 by a good margin, which is indicative of the fact that the Republican Party in Georgia, similar to Florida but not as good, has done a relatively solid job at promoting the Republican ethos in the state. And so by having good leadership, the people in Georgia that were wishy-washy and thought Trump was scary in 20 and didn't participate in 16 are going to be more likely to vote for Trump in 24 than they were before, if only for the fact that they're not as terrified. And with Joe Biden, when there was this idea of like some sort of like consistent leadership that was also working class, that was also this and that, What they got was a paraplegic, basically in the mind, and somebody who was utterly demented. And so, with that being said, there's a big reason as to why the Joe Biden facade is just completely becoming that a facade, a mirage that is drying up quickly. So, even the illusion itself is not something you can buy into. It's like requiem for a dream. You're at some point just amputating your arm because the meth isn't working anymore. So, that's basically the Biden campaign and the copium therein. So Georgia is going Republican. As you can see, Trump here is at over 276 electoral votes, looking strong as hell. He could win off of this alone. But of course, we're running up the score because who doesn't like a good big victory? So right now, we're looking at the state of Nevada. Nevada is going Republican too. The Republicans, similar to Georgia, similar to Florida, have found a way to basically, before there was a thing called the Harry Reid machine, who was a senator that's named after a senator who died, who had like a missing eye or some shit. This was over 10 years ago. They, basically the Democrats that is, had a control of the state intermittently similar to Florida, like circa 2008. And so they did a good job of making sure that for the next 10 years, Democrats got elected writ large. But what happened in 2022, and even the election prior to, is that Donald Trump, among with the other Republicans, have done better with the Latinos. In 2016, there was a scourge of anti-Latino sentiment, or at least that was the perception. So a lot of people that look like me were scared of getting deported. Now that people that obviously are citizens like I am, people that speak fluent English, people that are, were unreasonably scared of Trump deporting them for some reason, that's not going to happen. And so the Latinos are overall just more accepting of Donald Trump. And so they've eased up on it. And so realistically speaking, whereas in 2016, you could have seen like maybe 28% of Latinos voting Trump, we're really looking at like a 38% or something, which is brilliant. And so with that being said, any sort of demographic change, any sort of like immigration to Nevada thus far has been offset, like it's the Migos, with a more conservative voting disposition for them, which is great. And again, the amount of people that are being bused to vote and whatever is not going to compensate for the lack of leadership by the Biden administration. The polls show this. Elections recently have shown it, and if they haven't, then you're going to see it real quick. So Nevada is going Republican as well. And in fact, the 2022 election between Adam Laxalt and Catherine Cortez Masto would have gone to the GOP had there not been a snowstorm and a bunch of little other factors. And so keep this in mind, by the way. Now, with the state of Arizona, no, psych. Best for last. We're going for Nevada, the Keystone State. Home of the Philadelphia Eagles, also the Pittsburgh Steelers, mid-ass team. We have the Republicans winning this as well. As we all know, Joe Biden won the state by less than 2% last time. And what's more is obviously we have a lot of shenanigans that happened, so we know who won, but just saying on paper, that's who, won the state. Now, here's the thing with Joe Biden. Joe Biden is in a particular position because he had basically grifted off the fact that he grew up in Pennsylvania because he went to college there or something, and that he's called Scranton Joe. That worked because he's like, oh, there's like a 70-year-old white guy. He's in the factory. He's busting it up with the guys. And you know what? Now that doesn't work. Is he visiting the factories as much as he did? He might be, but I don't even know about that. And I'm a political person, you would think. And so, like, if I don't know about that, how does the layman know about that? So really, there's nothing to worry about in regards to like, oh, he's going to outflank Trump with the white working class. Not going to happen. This whole Fetterman grift of I'm with the working class is not going to happen. And what's even better is that this sort of working class, if you were to deregulate oil, if you were to actually increase healthcare subsidies, if you were to actually assuage certain social security net things like a Democrat ought to do, then that would actually work out for Pennsylvania, and you can see Biden winning it. But as far as I know, Biden hasn't really done anything in regards to healthcare, and he hasn't really done anything to help the oil workers in the shale industries in Pennsylvania. And so those people that voted for Biden in 2020 that worked in those oil fields, which is tens of thousands of different voters, are all going to come back. Those chickens are coming back home to roost for the Trump campaign in a good way. And so when you seed and harvest these fruits, you're going to notice real quick that these voters that went for Trump, for Biden over Trump from 2016 to 20 are going to go back to Trump in 24. And so that's going to be obvious. So you can see Trump win Pennsylvania by like 3-5. Okay. Arizona, similar as well. Now, it's not so much because there's a regional industry that's is privy to Trump or anything. But what is important about Arizona is that the Latino vote is getting better for the Republicans. The suburban trend that used to ail and plague the Republicans ever since John McCain in 2008 that thing is assuaging as well. And so what we're seeing is that Trump is operating off of a very high floor in Arizona. The Republican Party at Arizona, even as far right as they can possibly get, which would be like Carrie Lake in this case, which is like a little bit more right wing than Trump, you could argue. She only lost the governorship by 1 point in an election that was heavily outspent for the Democrats and whatever have you. So the Republicans have a very high floor in Arizona, demonstrably. And what's even better is that obviously they'll do better money wise this time with the Trump campaign than they did with the Kerry Lake campaign. And proportionally, also, the candidate for the Democrats is weaker. You look down the ballot, there's nobody strong for the Democrats. You've got a Senate candidate in Mark Gallego and Kirsten Sinema fighting for a double-headed ticket to beat Kerry Lake. And so it's a three-way race. So the Senate isn't going to fix anything for the Democrats, like just like raining upwards in a really weird way, in a topsy-turvy sense. But what's better is, of course, the Republican and Democratic nominees for president is Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Now, what's interesting about this is that Joe Biden really isn't campaigning in Arizona. He's not doing jack squat, and he doesn't really have a presence here. You don't really get the vibe that he cares about the state. And I think the people, the Democrats, are really just not enthused at all for the Democratic Party writ large. So I think Donald Trump wins the state by a couple of percent. Plus, there's a grouping of people. These are called the McCain Republicans, the moderates that didn't vote for Trump in 2020. These people were mostly scared of, like, well, Trump sucks, plus Biden is okay. Whereas now what they're going to say is Trump sucks, but Biden is fucking terrible. And they're Republicans already. So I see their votes flipping Republican, or they're not going to vote Democrat. Either way, that's a win for Trump, which is why he's getting the state of Arizona. So here we go. That is the election. 312 electoral votes for Trump, 226 for Biden. This is basically the 2016 map against Hillary, minus or plus the fact that Trump flips Nevada in this case. So it's even better this time. So anyway, big MAGA W. That's if the election were held today. God knows what will happen in less than a year, though. See y'all in the next video. Adios.